What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Yes, I am wearing a Brazilian soccer jersey, Chris. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm doing well.
Welcome to BJJ and Brews, everybody. We are live at AT2 Orlando. Saturday. I actually did not train. Chris did. He's one beer in already.
Yeah, Noah punked out today.
Huh?
Noah feels overtrained.
I just felt a little beat up, so I need an extra day to
Did
rest
you get
over the weekend.
rhabdo this week or something?
I'm sorry?
Did you get rhabdo this week or something? Or
No, I was in no-gi. There's a headlock series we're going through. So it's uke. My neck got a little extra work.
So your neck, so your C1 and C2 are like dislocated.
Yeah. And then yesterday I went with Justin and
oh my God,
Enrico,
that's like, yes.
and both of them got good squeezes on my head. So that my neck just feels like
you probably
like it just needs a little time to.
Hopefully you have one of those like my favorite pillows, so it's like giving you the perfect contour for your neck and stuff, so you're sleeping in proper alignment.
So how was class?
It was good. Ironically, so I just on Saturdays, as Paul likes to sort of take his time to get class started, I just went ahead and started, and I got everybody warmed up, and I didn't know that our lesson this week is sort of like a front headlock based and turtle based thing. So I actually was teaching the students how to spin today and like maintain pressure and that sort of thing, which led perfectly into what we were doing. I didn't know that. So
what did you do? Because it sounds like you might have done something different.
What do you mean?
Did you not do like X-guard entries from side control escapes?
That's what we did. I mean, I did that Tuesday, Thursday for morning class.
Okay, so what did you do? So I guess you did something I haven't seen yet.
Oh, it was just like clock choke, the cross choke, bow and arrow choke. I guess is the next series
From
for white belts.
the turtle.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
so that was fun.
Nice.
Yeah, that's like good. It's good to review because like I think the clock choke is just one of those underutilized things that Paul tends to get us in all the time, and we.
Yeah, he likes to get it because he'll take back and then take his hooks out.
Yeah.
And we'll turtle and he'll
put it in
clock choke
again.
us.
And it's just.
And he's got the grip still. He still has the grip.
Yeah. He's letting you play, right? Like he's like the cat with like the
I'll
lizard.
let you come up and then you just choke yourself.
So you said something earlier this week that was very intriguing to me. We had a little bit of a discussion about it on my way home from work. Is that you're like mentally fatigued from jiu-jitsu? Oh, do you still feel that way right now?
I mean, just a little bit. It was just that particular day. I likened it to when I lived in Spain and I'd speak Spanish all day as a non-native speaker. It took more mental effort to do that, and there were some days where I just wanted to just speak English. Like this is too much work, and then I would just with the jiu-jitsu I just happened to be grappling. I was like, what am I doing? Like, what's my objective right now? I'm just flailing around. Like, it's like this is taking too hard to think about. Like, well, they're gonna do this, so I have to do this. That's because again, I'm not.
You should just feel.
Yeah, no, I know, but I'm trying to like practice things. So there's a lot of purpose and intent and a lot of thought process going on.
But so your intention just be work the system that given that moment in time. That should be your
Did you watch the Bruce Lee documentary on ESPN?
No, I don't have ESPN. And I haven't. But I haven't been in my Bruce Lee kick a little bit lately though.
There we go. Be water,
man. That's like I'll get inspired and be like, yeah, I'll watch like Dragon, the Bruce Lee story.
The
or
original MMA fighter, according to Dana White.
I mean, there's a lot behind that.
So how much of Bruce Lee is you talk about hero worship? I feel like every decade, like in 10 years, we might be saying Bruce Lee walked on water. Like, weird.
I don't know. Like I think with my introduction to more alive martial arts, I stopped looking at Bruce Lee as this god, and more as I liken him to a pioneer, like the way Jigoro Kano was with jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
And and Masoyama was to like Kyokushin karate. Like that's sort of like how I look at Bruce Lee now. Like I'm not one of these like nut huggers that like these like traditional martial artists look at like what he does as something like super revolutionary. It's like to me, okay. So have you used to be a comic guy, not so much, right? Anymore?
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Okay, so like is that fair? All right. So people revere Watchmen as like the greatest piece of like comic book writing ever, right?
Well, yeah. Well,
And
people love Alan Moore.
I mean, he's a very good writer. Don't get me wrong. Supreme is a far better product. But so like I read Watchmen way after the fact just to become familiar with it when the movie came out. And so like I read it and I'm like, okay, this is good. But because that had set the stage for a lot of like modern, like treating comics as more than just like kid material. I've already been exposed to the stuff that had developed far beyond that. So like when I read it, I was like, okay, I get it. Like I could imagine for its time, like, oh wow, this is awesome and it's revolutionary and stuff. But like when I read it as like a 25-year-old or whatever case, I'm like, oh, it's good. Like I mean.
Yeah, but nowadays you can pick up Kingdom Come, which takes the characters that were traditionally portrayed,
which is my favorite comic, by the way.
Yeah, well,
yeah. But so that's why, like, that's how I feel about like Bruce Lee. Like people, I think if they're still trapped in the paradigm of traditional martial arts, they're going to continue to revere him as this god. Whereas, like, me having sort of like evolved beyond that and training like Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu and MMA in its limited capacity, or in my limited capacity of doing MMA, like I'm like, okay, I get it. Like I'll go back and I'll read like the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, and like even like the John Little expanded
stuff. Is it
stuff.
Tao or Dao?
It's a T in my book, and last I checked, we live in America, so if Shannon,
the Asian American.
If Shannon Lee or whoever the hell's heading that, like his brand now, decides to go and change it to the Cantonese version of Dao, then I'll start pronouncing it Dao. But like, what was I saying?
You were talking about.
I'll go back and I'll read like the Dao, and what did you do? I'll go back and read the Tao, or I'll read like the expanded version where like John Little took like he was given express permission to. Read like Bruce Lee's library of notes and stuff like that, and like sort of condense it and organize it better. And there was a series of books. Like I'll go back and I'll read those every so often. And like me being extremely familiar with MMA, and I guess you could say not an expert, but just well versed in MMA and jiu-jitsu and kickboxing.
Definitely more so than your common bystander.
Exactly, and definitely more so than a fucking traditional martial artist, right?
Yes.
Like I don't see that stuff as like revolutionary. Whereas like if your frame of reference is purely fucking Shotokan karate, and you read like, oh man, I should use Broken Rhythm, like that's amazing. Like you're like, oh my god, this is revolutionary, right? But like I watch fucking MMA on Pluto TV, and it's just like, okay, like we get it,
So what you're saying is context plays a big role.
Yeah,
and the context of that time when Bruce Lee was around and when The Watchmen came out.
But like that's an interesting thing too, because like we talk like jiu-jitsu is starting to become a little of that, right? Like you see the hero worship developing a little bit in jiu-jitsu now too, and that's I think that sort of frame of reference regarding jiu-jitsu is going to start holding it back, and there's going to be a big divergence.
But that's within the jiu-jitsu community. I think the thing about Bruce Lee is he transcended the traditional martial arts community because he became a mainstream movie star.
True.
So jiu-jitsu is still a niche, but we've always said it's
niche.
Young, so it's going to be
yes, it's very young. It's very young.
It's going to take some time.
So let me ask you how your training went this week, aside from getting your head popped off.
Yeah, it's fine. Good stuff.
You liking that club?
What club?
The club, man. The Crunch.
Oh, Club Crunch.
How many times have you been in this week? Any lucky ladies?
4 times.
4 times. My goodness.
Yeah, 4 times this week, and only I think two of which Paul and Eli were there. So they've been missing out. So the teamworks make the dream work is not happening right now.
So COVID like forced it. Now that it's done,
now
everybody's
people
back
are
on their
opting
own
to have a few extra Moscow mules at the ale house.
That's a good choice, man. Okay, I might have to partake if there is that the drink of choice.
That's what gets Paul and Eli sucked in, and then Eli proceeds to start ordering some JMOs.
What is a JMO? I know a Moscow Mule just because I love ginger beer. So.
That's Jameson. It's just he orders Jameson shots so much now that the bartender calls them J-Mo's to him. Like, oh, 2 more J-Mo's, Eli. Coming right up.
They know his name?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
his
boy.
first name basis.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
That's, and his fight's when? Postponed.
TBA.
Okay. TBD? TBA?
TBA. Yeah, TBD.
So he knows, but
no, TBD.
So
to be
TBD,
decided,
okay.
yeah. To be determined, to be decided.
So that's an interesting thing. As an athlete, if I were a competitive athlete, I'm not sure I would be doing that every night or as often as it's done.
Did you watch The Last Dance?
The Last Dance?
The Last Dance, the 10-part documentary on ESPN about Michael Jordan's final year with the Chicago Bulls when they won the last time.
So, as you know, my discretionary time is very limited. I made a commitment to myself that if I started something this year, I would finish it this year.
Did you ever finish The Mandalorian?
I did.
Okay.
Which is such a good show, by the way.
I'm glad you
I'm currently into the Badlands.
I've never heard that.
It was a show that was made post. It was AMC when they were like, "Oh, The Walking Dead is like super successful. If we put out good product, people will follow." It's a post-apocalyptic martial arts show.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, but done. It's like steampunk. Like I love worlds. Like what makes for like good storytelling is like world building where you learn about it through the course of the story, right? Like where there are rules and whatever's already established, and you just learn about it like without actually.
What about Preacher on AMC? What do you think about that?
I never watched it.
Oh, okay.
I'm not
watching
an Ennis guy, man. I can't
really?
deal with him.
I mean, it was just one of those things where it just seemed like a little overly violent for violence sake. Like they would just throw.
But
blood.
that's the comic, though,
I understand.
right? So I mean, like, have you watched The Boys?
Yeah, I loved it.
I mean, that's.
Yeah, but yeah, it just how it was put together. Like in the demeanor it was put together. It just
is it okay? I haven't watched Preacher, and I'm not a Constantine and stuff fan and all that sort of stuff.
So back to the thing, because it started with The Last Dance. Did you follow Michael Jordan to any degree in the 90s?
That's when I stopped watching basketball, was when he retired the second time.
Okay, awesome. So there's some context there. You'll relate to this.
I do know sports beyond combat sports. I mean, like, let's be clear.
Okay.
And basketball might be the extent of it. I still don't know the rules to football.
You had said, as an athlete getting ready for a competition, I don't know if I would necessarily do, let's say, go out at night and drink copious amounts of liquor, sort of thing. And I said, have you seen The Last Dance? Well, the reason I say
are you
that,
expressly trying to be quiet today?
No, I'm not. No, I'm.
Normally, you're so much more boisterous.
Well, I'm standing right in front of you. It's just because I feel like the training in the background's so loud that I had to get close to hear you.
It's fine.
But no, I'm looking at the levels on the computer. We're both at good levels.
Okay, good.
So, Phil Jackson,
the Zen master.
They talk explicitly about how he handled all those personalities.
Okay.
And in one instance, Dennis Rodman came to them.
Well, yeah, that's
their final year and said,
and that's Jordan Gen 2, version 2.0.
And you
cannot have that, sir.
We have Victor inspecting beer.
When's your birthday, Victor?
And Chris.
Victor, when's your birthday?
July 12th. Chris, all I want for my birthday is
to
share a beer with you,
Victor,
man.
I've got one special for you. It's in the fridge right now.
Oh,
all right?
shit.
No, for real. Yeah, for real. July 12th, I got one for you, okay?
My man.
I'm going to do it right. Like, none of this bullshit stuff. I've got a Dogfish 120 for me and you that you and I will split.
I don't know what that is, but I'm down.
It's 12% alcohol for a beer. It's like drinking maple syrup. So, all right. So July 12th, we got Victor's birthday. So we got to run the line on you too, just so you know.
So if people are still following this story, because we keep interrupting
it's fine.
How many times? So Dennis Rodman comes to Phil Jackson, says, I need to go to Vegas.
Okay.
In the middle of their season. Right? And Phil's like, sure. He goes to Michael. He's like, Dennis wants to go to Vegas. Jordan's like, what the fuck? What do you mean? And they basically said, okay, you got 48 hours. You do whatever the fuck you want.
No. No way.
And he left, and he went to Vegas. and he came back to Chicago, and he hadn't reported in yet. And Carmen Electra tells the story from her perspective because she was dating.
She was married to him, right?
Or married to him. She was either dating or married.
Yeah.
And to where Michael Jordan's pounding on the door. He comes into the room or the bedroom.
He's like, your 48 hours are up.
And she was like, I was freaked out, so I just hid under a sheet.
Was that a no-knock rule that he used?
I don't know, but basically there was all manner of you don't want to know happening in that bedroom or going on. But the end of this, the moral story is, Phil Jackson had a knack, if you look historically, at understanding what each athlete needed. Dennis needed that in order to continue to perform at a high level.
Okay.
And to further show that as
Is it
evidence,
appropriate to cross-collar a dog?
the next day back,
Okay.
they're going to do conditioning, and the assumption was, well, we're doing conditioning because of Dennis. Jordan's
Did Dennis
pissed.
just kill it? No,
That's
way.
what he did.
That's crazy.
So Jordan tells them, like, guys, he tells everybody else, guys, don't be running super fast, like, because we're going to do Indian runs. So they're going to do laps around.
You need to call those. That's the thing where the person from the back sprints to the front.
I don't know any other name to call them, and I think they call them
that's
that.
super politically
I know,
incorrect.
but-
Come on, man! On July 12th of all
But
days.
I don't even know what the like.
And I'm not even. My dates are all fucked up.
Yeah,
it's
well-
June 13th.
I don't know what the what the politically correct term for that thing is.
Okay, Indian. I know what it is.
Basically,
I didn't know you can't call things Indian
You're
style
jogging, and the last person in line sprints to the front, and when that person gets to the front, the next person goes. So Jordan basically said, guys, I want you guys basically walking. I don't like it's mid-season, we're in shape. Well, Dennis gets out there and he starts going. Took him 4 laps to catch him,
Really?
according to the story. So the point is I'm not going to pass judgment on anyone's choices and what they do in their off time, as long as they're putting in the work necessary to get ready for their competition the way they need to do it. That to me is what's important. So
That's so interesting.
I might not
because,
do what I'm with you. Like, I wouldn't do that, me personally, and maybe you wouldn't do it. But just because you and I wouldn't do it doesn't mean that's not the right thing for
That's
someone
such
else.
an interesting thing because, like, I listen to a lot of, like, Sam Harris, right? Like, but I'm going to go there. Like,
I just think that Wikipedia entry about, like, this group of podcasters that's alternative think, Sam Harris, Joe Rogan.
but,
all
like,
these-
okay, so, like, but there's objective ways you can measure human performance.
is Sam Harris the one that talks about, like, social hierarchies?
No.
Who's that one? Jordan Peterson.
That's Peterson, yeah.
Jordan
Sam
Peterson.
Harris is the guy who's a moral landscape.
Okay.
So, like, we can cure malaria, right? Like, but we kind of can't. Like, just because we know what the definition of health is, or excuse me, we don't know what the definition of health is, but we can definitely define disease, right? And just because there are many different definitions to health and human performance, doesn't mean we should use. I'm so drunk right now.
I know you're really mumbling here, man.
Yeah,
I'm trying to
so
follow
like
what you're saying.
I'm gonna give a shout out to Blue Point real quick. They're not
Okay.
sponsoring this. This is totally bought by Chris's pocket. It's Imperial Sunshine. It's a blonde ale with orange and natural flavors. It's 9.6% alcohol. So I
You do
rolled
look
three-
pretty red.
I rolled 3 5-minute rounds. Super dehydrated. I'm pretty sure I woke up this morning.
You didn't have breakfast?
I I did.
Oh, you did have breakfast.
I did have
So this
breakfast,
is
which
not
actually I
fasted
performed
cardio.
pretty okay in jiu-jitsu. So, Victor's like ribbing me a little bit. He's like, "What do I have to do to make you try a little harder when I roll?" And so I gave him like a little bit more pressure today. Like I try a little bit more. So I
You know,
sweat
he's
off
only
a little more.
130 pounds, so you better be able to put pressure on him.
Yeah. I mean, like, So I think I woke up at 187.
So let's prevent you from going on this derailing
Weird,
us with going
crazy
on.
tangent.
So I had a question coming into this, and we're 20 minutes in. And I haven't gotten asked the question because we go through our pleasantries of, well, how was your training this week? Well, I don't know. How was your training this week?
Oh, right, yeah. But that's the joy of like
no,
podcasting,
of course, and you
right?
get the updates on everything, and just as a gym update, class sizes continue to increase.
Yeah, man.
So there are a lot of people on the mat,
especially
both in
6
Muay Thai.
a.m., baby.
This is true.
Yeah.
You're rocking it in the morning. You rock it in the mornings, man. You got at least 8 to 10 people every morning.
It's awesome, and it's a bunch of white belts. They're eager to learn. They're all about the pohada. They appreciate the Chris
and then
5-minute rants.
Lurking. And then Brian McKenzie lurks.
And then Brian McKenzie smashes them. It's fun. It's been fun, man, because like we had
he must be the most confident grappler right now.
It's really, really fun because like John Haidt, his last day was like the first Tuesday back or whatever the case was. So like we did the whole tradition of like running the line on him. And then like Jamal's birthday was the other day too. So we all like ran the line on him. It was so fun. But
and Mackenzie's like the last guy that goes.
Well, I'm the last guy technically. So like it's fun because like I get to do my like Andre Galvao like impression, where I could just like float on them all around and just like not give them an opportunity.
Like it almost feels like these poor people are going through like old school Street Fighter 2, and then they get to those final four. Where they, it's like, now you get Saget. Now you get M. Bison.
Who was the first boss?
The first boss was Vega.
No,
was it Vega or Bishop?
Bishop? What comics are you mixing this?
No, who's the boxing guy?
M. Bison.
No, the boxer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Balrog.
Was it Balrog or
Balrog,
Vega?
Venom. No, Venom.
Balrog,
Jesus Christ.
It was Balrog, Vega, Saget,
and then M. Bison.
Yeah,
right?
there we go.
So, it's like here's my logic behind that, right? And this is, I'll get him on the podcast at one point. It's a Matt Thornton thing. So for like every promotion for SBG, they do an Ironman. It's a 2-hour roll nonstop. 2 hours
for every promotion.
For every promotion, everybody's getting promoted, right?
Doesn't matter the belt level.
Doesn't matter the belt. Like from white to blue, blue to purple, whatever. It's a fucking 2-hour roll, and they bring everybody in the gym in, right? So it's like a big, like, awesome tribal thing. Just like we have our tradition too.
Well, how do you do it if you have multiple people up for promotion?
You get them all on the mat.
Oh, so basically it's like a 2-hour open mat where the people up for promotion are obligated.
Are on the entire
They have
time,
to be rolling
right?
the whole time.
And his rule is, and it makes a lot of sense, right? Like you have to work up the ranks because people, as you get higher in rank, Mark Peace aside, have better control, right? So I can't have somebody who's tired from 3 rounds in going with somebody who's a fucking spazzy white belt, right? So like my rule is you work up the ranks because a person who's in there for the long run is going to be able to defend themselves better against a fresh, crazy, spazzy white belt, right? So I mean, all the mornings have ended with me, which like that's my like true opportunity to play. Like, have you seen that video of like Andre Galvao just spitting on people with his knees?
Oh yeah,
yeah, I do that. It's fun, right? Like, but
okay.
Yeah. So class sizes have been getting big. You're right.
That's awesome, man.
It's great, and it's really fun. It's really encouraging, especially for morning classes, where we're not that way like necessarily getting a rut of like doing the same things over and over with each other. As like me, Collie, Tommy, and like Brian McKenzie, like, but it's refreshing to like actually work the curriculum, have people excited to be there and learn the curriculum and that sort of thing. So it's been fun.
Most of those people are not only training exclusively at 6 a.m.
They're training
in the afternoons as well. So there's
So
consistency between the morning and afternoon or evening
curriculum. And that's awesome, right? Like because like the morning classes, like we're a weird bunch. Like it's people who, like a lot of times I'm not going to speak for people, but I kind of am. But like they feel kind of left out, right? Like, but it's they're a part of the gym just the same. They just don't see everybody else. So consistency is key.
But I'm seeing a bigger percentage of people in that morning group that, like I said, don't train exclusively at 6 a.m. Right? Like Brian McKenzie. But Brian McKenzie's been training for a while, and he's a brown belt. But of the white belts, you've got
Victoria, who's the hardest working person in the gym right now.
You've got the Ortiz brothers, you know what I mean?
They can only be 2.
Two of 3.
They can only be 2. I haven't gotten 3. I'll shame them into 3 at some point. So I've got Patrick out there.
Yeah, and these are all people that train also in the evenings.
It's awesome. Like,
So-
and then, you know, more mat time, better for them. That's
Oh,
great,
absolutely.
man.
Absolutely. Okay, so my question.
What was your question?
I haven't gotten to it yet.
Oh, you had. Oh, okay. What's
I
your
haven't gotten to
question?
my question. So, my question is around language in jiu-jitsu.
That's an interesting one. Define that.
Really about the definition of positions, the vocabulary we use.
What's got you thinking about that, by the way?
What got me thinking about it was another Danaher video where Danaher goes on his tirade about, we need to be able to, act.
I don't
But his
know.
big thing is I need to be able to tell an athlete with a word or two what to do, and they know exactly what I'm saying.
Exactly, right?
And that he's saying it from the competition side of things.
Right, and isn't that why like football people use like codes?
Oh yeah. So I might open to really frame this. We talked either as last podcast or a few podcasts ago the notion of, we have a more sophisticated take on
Bro,
top
this guy,
side.
just to clarify real quick, this dude was lifting before class, took class, and is lifting again. You are an animal. You were lifting before class, you took class, and now you're lifting again? That's awesome, by the way. I commend you.
Chris,
This dude is a fucking animal.
Chris just gives a shout out to one of our members here, Mark.
Hey, get over here real quick. Come here.
Here we go.
This is just, I'm super drunk,
So
and we're recording our podcast, and I need you to introduce yourself.
My name is Mark.
Mark, welcome to BJJ and Brews. Are you a competitive athlete?
Yeah, I like to compete. I really do. It's something that drives me and motivates me.
That's awesome, man. So, like, you came in. I saw you benching with the multi-bar. And I saw you doing dips and pull-ups and shit. Now you're working on hang on. You took class. Worked with Xander, of all people, who is...
and you did
just-
bag and pad, right?
And did
so
jiu-jitsu,
did
and did
jiu-jitsu
Muay Thai.
and bag and pad. So 2
And now
hours.
you're lifting again. Why?
I just want to be the best version of myself.
What are your goals?
My goals are just to conquer everything I set out to be. I want to compete in MMA, and I know that physical ability along with technique goes a long way. So I want to master both, not be a jack of all trades, but no, I just want to master everything that's in front of me. And I know sometimes you can have information overload and your body can just malfunction sometimes, but I just want to push myself to the limit. That's it.
When did it get in your head that you wanted to start training MMA?
First, I started doing a little bit of pro wrestling. Yeah.
At one of the schools here?
Yeah.
Okay.
But that was like fresh out of high school. Then I started noticing I started competing with other wrestlers mentally, but they didn't know it. Like I would try to outdo them even in drills. So
Pro wrestling drills, not wrestling drills.
just pro wrestling drills, yeah. I was starting to want to outdo them. And then one of my mentors took notice of that. And he was like, bro, you're in the wrong sport. But me being hard-headed, I was like, no, I always watched it as a kid, so I want to do it. But I did notice that it's a difference between show business and competitive business.
What wrestling academy were you training out of?
I was training at 2.0, Pro Wrestling 2.0.
Who was the head coach over there?
His name, we had multiple coaches. We have coaches that come in from WWE, like Cedric Alexander, but the head guy above it was Alex Porto.
Okay, cool.
Is that here?
Yeah,
So this is Orlando Kissimmee. We're
Orlando. It's
Or-
like literally 15 minutes away from here.
15 minutes.
I don't know roads like that.
Okay.
The one by Full Sail? Or?
Full Sail, yeah, it's about Full Sail.
Yeah. So what? It was your first time training MMA when you came in here,
Yes.
and how did it feel training this versus doing professional wrestling?
It's theatrical wrestling versus wrestling.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Did you?
It gave me an objective goal instead of a pretend goal, basically.
So how? What? Have you given any thought to when you think you would? When do you feel like you'd want to have your first amateur fight?
When are you going to do it? What are you going to... What's going to be your first live competition? Is it going to
Yeah.
be kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, straight into MMA? What's your idea?
I want to take a couple of grappling tournaments first.
Go grappling.
I really like to grapple, even though my mentor says I got a thing for striking. I mean, I like the chess game of striking.
Who is your mentor?
His name is David Milan.
How is he your mentor?
Chris, you can come over here, man. Chris, come over here, man. Give the guy his own mic, and we actually have 3 mics here, and we only have 2 plugged in. We could plug another one in.
I'm on number 3, by the way.
Yeah, Chris is.
Woo, Spilly.
So basically, he was an individual that when I started pro wrestling, he kind of took me under his wing, and he started like.
Is he also a pro wrestler?
No.
Okay.
He just started edifying me. He realized how autodidactic I was, and he just took grasp of that. He says that I'm actually a younger version of himself. So we just gravitated to each other.
Okay. Very cool. And what is your current training schedule like right now?
Right now, Monday through Friday, I go to work from 8 to 4. I come in. I try to make it here around 5, but I can't beat traffic.
Yeah, man. Kelowna traffic's pretty rough, man.
So what I do is...
There's a 6 a.m. class, you know.
Hmm?
There's a 6 a.m. class, you know, on Tuesday, Thursday.
Well, since I beat my body up so much, I try to get as much. I try to get as much rest as possible because rest is just as equal as possible.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, not equally as effective as training.
So what do you do for a living?
I work at a call center right now.
Okay, cool.
So my regular schedule would be from 8 to 4:45. Then I try to beat traffic to get here, and normally I get here like around 5:30. I try to hit the weights as much as I can, then start class, and depending on how I'm feeling after the first class, I'll probably take a second class or finish out my weights or what I was doing.
Cool, man. What is in terms of like your strength and conditioning, what are your goals with that? Because obviously someone to lift before and after class, like you definitely have to have some sort of objective in mind. So are you trying to put on more weight? Are you trying to lean out? What are your goals in terms of?
I'm just trying to get stronger and lean out. I know it's kind of that's a tough task, but I like just to be physically strong.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I always like. Even as a kid, you know, I used to grapple as a kid a little bit, but that was more freestyle wrestling. So I used to always have a knack for just wanting to physically dominate somebody. Then when I got here and realized it was about technique, I was like, oh, I don't know nothing.
Yeah. That's hilarious, man. I mean, so what's been one of your biggest takeaways? You said you wrestled before, but this is your first like exposure to jiu-jitsu, correct?
Did you go? And that's the thing is, did you go straight into pro wrestling, or did you like wrestle in high school first?
I did a little bit of wrestling in high school first.
Well, yeah, when I said wrestling, I meant amateur wrestling.
amateur.
Yeah, I meant amateur.
I did a little bit of wrestling in high school, but it didn't work out because I was going to a high school where it wasn't in my district. So I had to catch the city bus to get home. So it just didn't work out schedule-wise.
Okay.
Like, sometimes I would get out of practice, and I would have to literally call one of my friends' mom to come get me, and it just didn't work out.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. So since this is your first kind of exposure to jiu-jitsu and training it, what's one of the biggest takeaways that you would tell one of your homies or a friend that doesn't do jiu-jitsu? Like, what's kind of your big takeaway about introducing it to someone that doesn't train?
How I would introduce them to jiu-jitsu will basically be, I think everyone should learn how to defend themselves. I think self-preservation is very important. So I would just tell one of my friends is just, you know, you should learn how to defend yourself, basically, you know, because coming up in the environment that I come up in, we think we know, but we don't know. Yeah. You know, so.
What was it like those first few weeks training here in the jiu-jitsu class?
I liked it. A lot of people don't know how to take a loss, and they will lose and they'll mentally quit and give up. No, I look at it as another mountain to climb. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I like to consider myself a journeyman. I more so love the journey than the actual accomplishment.
Yeah.
So I like to see myself get better.
Cool, man. Well, dude,
how long have you been here now in total?
In total, minus quarantine.
Minus quarantine, yeah.
Okay, minus quarantine, about 6 months.
That's a very mature perspective you have for somebody who's only been doing this for 6 months. So that's awesome, man.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Well, I've taken you away from your lifting. I apologize for that.
No problem.
All right. I hope your muscles didn't get too cold. But I had to shout you out, man. Like, I see you coming here before on Mondays, and you're like lifting for a class, and that's awesome, man. Like, people, I just have a tremendous amount of respect for people who are just willing to put their fucking nose to the grindstone and just grind it out and just do the work.
Yeah.
And there's no. And this is actually, I think, my first actual interaction with you, and I just had to give you the props, man. That's fucking awesome.
Thank
like,
you so
if
much.
everybody could come and just willing to just put in the goddamn work, like, I think a lot of people wouldn't quit jiu-jitsu when they get their blue belts. And I see you reaching a black belt at some point, just with that
Thank
level
you
of
so
dedication,
much.
man. Like, that's fucking awesome. So. Keep with it, dude. You should be. You're an inspiration to all, even to a guy who's been doing it for 15 years. So,
Thank you so much.
And that was Mark. What's your last name?
Bowen.
Bowman. Bowen.
Bowen.
All right.
get back to your workout. Don't tear a muscle.
Yeah.
I apologize if you do. You know you can charge me of other cases. You can bill me on that. I'll somehow get you on my insurance. So Noah, you were saying that was fucking awesome, by the way. Like, that's the shit I fucking love, man. People who just goddamn get in there and do the work.
Yeah,
so you're
man.
you're talking about language, right? And
yeah, about language. So
what is your question ultimately?
here's my when I was driving over here. My thought was, we kind of said a few episodes ago that our school has a slight. Again, I hate to sound braggy, but I think we're a little more sophisticated when it comes to teaching top side control.
Yes.
And top side, or rather, side control escapes. Because
They go hand in hand.
They
right?
go
Like,
hand in
yeah,
hand. But that position, that dynamic, we teach that at I would say a higher level to white belts than other schools do on average. You know.
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes down to the fact that we already distinguish between 4 variants of the top side position, and we just number them 1 through 4.
Right. And the heuristics involved between when to do each.
Exactly. And that goes along with it. But we actually say, if on our blue belt test, we say, show us side transition from side control 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 and back, and people know what that is. A blue belt, you can say side control 3 and they know what that is, and they can immediately assume that position. So I'm thinking about all these other positions that I'm in that we don't have that clarity for. And the one that I'm going to just blurt out right away, partly because I'm working on it right now from the guard perspective, but also because I think it's very natural to do that, because it's a closer proximity sort of situation, is half guard.
Okay.
How come we don't number half guard here? Maybe we could come up with more clever names, but could we
Half
number
guard, top or bottom, or both?
Let's start with top, because
Okay.
that's what we talk about when we talk about top side position 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're talking about it with respect to the top person. Generally, when we address someone, like, go to position 3, we're telling the top person to assume position 3. The
Right.
bottom person has to do less work, to do that.
Yeah.
How could we number side? Could we?
Okay.
half guard,
Do you?
know?
I think that might be problematic, because there are, like, if you look at like top side control, not to reiterate, but like, there are realistically 3 things that can use to block out the hip for top side control, right? And and they're very evident in position 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? The hand, the hip, or the knee. But if you look at top top half guard, there are so many different orientations and between your torso and leg that I think at some point you start, unless you do like a micro level of like position 1, 2, and 3 of like, let's say traditional half guard, right? And there's position 1, 2, and 3 of like them facing your hips, and position 1, 2, and 3 of like almost quarter guard. I guess that's a different guard altogether, right? Like, does it become problematic? And at that point, do you go and you say like 2A? or 1B?
Well,
Or,
you get
you
into
know.
this thing where are we going to use?
Do they have
Are we going
the
to
cross
use?
face?
Are
Do
we-
they not have the cross
well,
face?
are we going to start using all these like suffixes or prefixes to define position? Like, hey, I'm in half guard. Half guard with the near side underhook versus the far side underhook. So I want near side underhook, far side cross face, or far side underhook, near side cross face. Like, to shout it out, it suddenly requires like an entire detailed sentence that requires you to kind of really deconstruct it to understand what the person's saying. Now, I kind of get why 10th Planet names their shit the way they do, even though I'm not familiar with it. I'm really talking it from a distance, but to be able to say mission control and people just know, like, it's 2 words, mission
Right.
control,
Yeah.
and it defines a very specific position. Whereas if we use like more generic, like, language that could be used to describe a multitude of positions, where we include, near side, cross face, far side underhook, that's what, now suddenly it takes a long time to say it, and you have to actually think about what
But
the
it's
person
so
said.
clear.
Well, that is clear, but I'm saying it doesn't. Is that good enough, or do we need to actually like almost memorize like specific positions?
That's an interesting thing, right?
And here, and now here's
Yeah.
another interesting dilemma to this whole thing that I'm realizing is that the way I play top side is influenced heavily by the fact that in my mind there are 4 main positions, and I'm less likely to assume other variants of top side that Paul hasn't numbered. So, for example, position 2, where I'm not cross facing the guy, but I actually take my cross face arm
And put it over.
and I put it over, and
That's
I
like
put
the traditional one that I talked about, right?
Exactly, where I actually put the back of my arm
It's kind of a
wedged
worthless
against
position,
his.
but yeah.
We don't have a name for that, and guess what? It actually doesn't occur in my head as much because I was taught to transition between 1, 2, 3, and 4, which works. It's a system.
So that's an
but there's
interesting
another.
thing, right?
There are
Because,
there are other variations to it. Way less. There are no white belts that really go to north south once they learn position 1, 2, 3, and 4, because in their mind it's 1 through 4, not 1 through 5, even though we claim that 5 is north south.
But
now,
isn't
so
that
hang
a
on,
thing of,
one thing here,
like-
for the benefit of the listeners that aren't in our gym, because we keep saying 1, 2, 3, and 4, and if you don't go to our gym, you're like, what the fuck are these guys talking about? We're all talking about variations of top side control. Position 1 is Kesikatami, correct? Correct me on
Position 1 is like modified case katami, because case katami is actually with the headlock.
with the headlock. So this is it's kind of a judo position where you're sitting on your hip facing forward. So you can look into the eyes of your opponent. And I'm not going to get into too much detail because we're already seeing the difficulty in explaining the position, right? Like, if I want to explain that position just in layman's terms, it actually is a struggle. Side control position 2 is what I would consider standard side control. You've got a far side underhook, a near side crossface, and you're on both your knees, one knee around their head, one knee covering their hip.
Yes.
Position 3 is a variation of position 2,
double underhooks is
where
what
it's
I
double
call it,
unders,
yeah.
where now you still have a crossface.
It's the I
and
call
now
it the
you're
bulldozer.
blocking the hip with your hand
And the head with your hand.
and the head with your hand, correct?
Yes.
And then position 4 is essentially a reverse of position 1, where now you're looking at the opponent's feet.
That's like twister side control is the 10th
It's-
planet.
Yeah, okay, the twister side control.
Yeah.
But I thought twister side control included the hook, where you actually
Did it?
have
Does
hooked the.
I
I'm
don't
not
know,
familiar.
I'm not a 10th planet guy.
Okay.
So.
Ryan's out there.
Ryan,
Yeah, Ryan's like,
correct
you
me if I'm wrong.
doofuses. So my thing is, why don't we say? So let's use a position Paul covers a lot, right? One of the first ways Paul teaches people to, or one of the primary ways Paul teaches of passing half guard, is if you're and when I'm talking knee shield half guard, so they're in Z guard, is to pop your trapped leg onto their thigh, cup with your outside arm the bottom of their bottom knee.
Actually, it's the near side arm, not the outside arm.
Here we go. Near
That's
side,
what-
outside.
right, so-
No, near side would be the one
That's closest to
close to the
them.
knee shield. Do we agree on that?
Yeah, we cup that on the knee, right?
No, if you cup you take your outside arm, you take your outside
Far side arm.
your
okay.
far side arm, your outside hand, and you cup the bottom of the knee of the opponent that's on the ground. Not
You're
the
talking
knee shield
about.
one.
Okay, so that's the thing is like now we're talking systems, not positions.
Yeah, and now what does he do? You then square your opponent up by pulling
but
that knee
getting
up,
their flat-
and
their
then you
back flat on
can
the mat, okay.
get their back flat on the mat, and then you swim your inside arm, which was on the outside of the knee shield, to swim inside
Right. To
the knee shield, and now you can just do a knee slice pass.
Right.
Okay, why don't we call that a position? Like popping the knee, because we call headquarters. We know what headquarters is. I don't know why.
Well,
but
you and I know what headquarters is.
I know
Does
you
everyone
and I
else know
headquarters, and that's a position. That's a intermediate position from a passing perspective. You're in De La Riva, and now you've killed the leg, not the hook leg, but the other leg in your squat. If we know what headquarters is, we know what it is.
Because I think at
Why
some
don't we have a
point,
position-
minutia gets hard to remember.
I mean, I think that position that Paul has us do is there's
Because
so
it
much.
only
There's so
there's-
much that can come off of that.
But there's also so much that leads into that, right? Like there's so many variables that can take place in that minutia position that, like, to say, in my opinion, like I'm thinking of myself in terms of like if I'm cornering a grappler at like a tournament, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're a knee shield. If I'm just calling out that position, there's a system in place that goes for them to get to that position in the first place. That micro position, let's call it, right? Because like it's not a part of like the big like 8 of jiu-jitsu in the hierarchy of positions. Because that's not really a position necessarily. It's one of it's the middle game, right? That John Rumsey talks about.
I feel like there are a class of positions that occur frequently enough that still go into the guise of invisible jiu-jitsu that should have explicit names. I think headquarters is an example of that, where
That's a
people
very good
finally
example of that, actually.
named an intermediate position because there's a lot that can go off that position.
For both people.
For both
incidentally.
people,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. Like because
as the guard retainer, you need to know if
I can go to like reverse DLR, right?
Exactly. If someone goes to headquarters on me, I need to there are these reactions I can do
Right.
accordingly. I'm not sure if the example I just used of one way to get around the knee shield, that position of popping up is necessarily in one of those intermediate positions, but I think if we named a few more, it would probably go a long way to opening people's eyes about that lattice of positions.
That sort of goes against what you and I talked about in a very early conversation.
Okay.
About like the mind web of things and mind maps. Like if in doing so you have to systemize things, right? Because like let's say I'm coaching you and you're grappling in a tournament, right? And I see you in that Z-guard position. There are multiple steps that are involved with getting to that position, right? Like so if I sit there and I say like headquarters, like to you, like I know you have in mind I need to get to headquarters, but there's so many variables involved. Like in an ideal sequence of events, you would sit there and get to headquarters, you grab that you with the near side, or excuse me, the far side arm to the bottom leg, and blah blah blah, and square up their hips, right? Like, but you know you need to get there. Is at that point, like that's where the creativity in your mind is involved with the given variables available to you. I need to get there, and this is my best case scenario. Right, like that's what, like, because at that point, like I'm literally applying a system to one position.
But the thing is we already have other language that we have this notion of the series. Like I've heard Paul say it. We all say it. Oh, you have the Kimura trap series. That's this word that we've attached.
Sure.
The Kimura trap, which is basically the system of when you ways into the Kimura trap, what the Kimura trap position is, and what the attacks are of that Kimura trap. Well, I feel like why does that make sense for Kimura trap, but 1, 2, 3, and 4 for top side makes sense for that? Why do we not quote number the Kimura trap, or why do we not make top side a series?
I mean, we could do that. We just don't.
But I believe it should be uniform.
We could say,
and if they're not uniform,
so let's say like
we need to define.
We go K1, right? And then like we know what we need to do. Is that what you're saying? Like just make more concise instructions instead of like.
I'm saying we need to define more position. We need to have the language to define all of jiu-jitsu, and we need to do it consistently. And saying one thing is a series and saying, but we do.
Wow, that's sounding pretty set 10th Planet.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Have you not? Have you?
So
ever
my
watched?
question now is like, so what about close guard? Close guard is another thing where why don't we like close guard is not just I'm flat on my back, I've got my arms wrapped around. That could be position 2, or that could be position 1, or that could be position 0. And I'm using the numbers just to be consistent.
For the sake of because 1, 2, 3, and 4 works well for us.
Yeah,
right now, like first
honestly, I think 1, 2, 3, and 4 could be improved upon, but it's just to something more descriptive than a number. It's a magic.
It's broad enough to allow for variation within the role for the person to adapt, but it's concise enough for the person to execute.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the strength of position 1, 2, 3, and 4.
But look at close guard.
But there's so many different grips in close guard.
Exactly.
Right? But like, so how do you?
And that's why I hear. What do I hear about close guard? The overhook series. If I say close guard overhook series, images are conjured in your mind.
Oh yeah, I already know what to do.
You already know what I'm talking.
What options are available to me? Sure.
So why is okay? So I guess my thing is, it sounds like series seem to be the better way. I'm just spitballing how we've talked about, where it seems like we like to talk about systems, and whether we use the word system or series, I think they can be used pretty interchangeably.
They're interchangeable.
They're interchangeable. Because the overhook series is literally you get to this overhook in close guard, and now you can do a bunch of stuff.
I'm not giving you one.
So
give me puppy dog.
My question is, how do we then turn top side into a series?
Because isn't a series so a system? How are we? You and I are right now using series and system interchangeably.
Correct.
I would say a system is a series is a means to an end to a system. Is that fair to say?
So let's look at the Kimura trap.
Let's look at the Kimura. That's a very good example. Like, by the way,
Kimura trap is, when I think of a Kimura trap series, the way I've been taught it. I'm not going to talk about how I would organize it. The way I've been taught it is, here are entries into the Kimura trap. You get taught entries into the position, and then the series are the actions, the reactions to common, the actions you take to common reactions your opponent makes once you enter the system. Ooh! Danaher entered the system. Me and my opponent have entered the system. We learn how to enter it. Once we enter it, there's an outcome. Either they do something and I fail and the thing breaks down, or I react accordingly and I get to one of two things. I either achieve a more dominant position
in back control,
or I submit the person.
So
those are the ways
that's the thing, is like a system.
And then you enter another system.
A system has an end in mind, right?
Correct.
But a series is a sequence of events, or a sequence of actions and reactions that lead to the end in mind.
Okay, so I think when we say Kimura trap series, that's just the word we use. We say series, but it's a system. I want to say it's a system. I think the overhook series is technically a system.
Yes. Okay.
Because when you get an overhook, your goal is not to go to. Anytime you assume a position, is not to get to a lesser position. It's to get a.
Of course, it's to advance, right?
Correct. And then you enter another system at that point. Now, when it comes to side control,
that's the issue, right? Like, because let's look at a position like in our system, position 3 or position 2. There are so many different systems you can choose to go from there. I mean, like, you can go to an armbar system.
So I agree with you.
You can go to a back kick system, right?
The buy on bottom is doing a system. The guy on top is assuming
doing-
different. Basically,
So hang on. So you're
control-
saying the person on bottom is the defensive person at that point
actually has a system.
has a system, whereas
They have less
the
control.
attacker.
They have less control over it, but it is a system.
That's interesting because like, so that's a perspective issue, right? Like, because you ask Ryan Martman, there's submission from every position. Whereas like me being a pure jujitsuist, I don't even know how to fucking wrestle. I'm positioned before submission.
So okay, no, this is my point. I think side control 1, 2, 3, and 4 are variations of pins. They are not systems. They are variations of pins.
Okay,
from
that's
each
fair.
of those pins, you can enter. You could potentially enter a system if you're in. If you're in side control 4.
So you're saying a system is with a direct end in or a specific end in mind,
Yes,
like an armbar system.
correct.
Or right. So like, how am I going to achieve an armbar given all of these variations that can potentially happen within this position?
But you might be able to say, if you take all those top side positions together, it's a pinning system.
Ooh, okay.
But
That's
the
fair.
goal, but it's weird. The goal of it is not. There's no real.
And that's a crazy thing about jiu-jitsu, right? Like, so
Like to me, it's a different paradigm.
let's look at
Like
it
I
from,
can go into the Kimura trap system from top side
or bottom side even.
or bottom side even. Yeah.
Right? So like that's the crazy thing because I've been playing with that a lot. So like that's an interesting thing. Like let's look at that from like your tennis perspective, right?
Oh boy.
Are there systems and that's a big thing behind systems, right? Like you're funneling.
Yeah. So in tennis, it's different. In tennis, we wouldn't use the word systems. It's tennis
Strategies?
is no. It's constructing sequences of shots. So
And how often do those sequences, if done properly, actually happen? Like I
They
do
happen
this,
all the
their typical
time.
reactions are
But
these.
no, they happen all the time. What happens is, does the person make an error prior to the final shot of the sequence?
That's super interesting, right? Like because like how often in tennis you're describing essentially a kata, right?
Oh yeah.
Like is that a kata? Because like you have an end in mind. I'm starting with this. If I do this, they're typically going to do this. Like it's a game of percentages. If I do this, then they
Yeah.
typically will do one or the other. How often does
Depending on how well you hit the shot. Like if you were to execute everything,
See you, man.
the
July
like anything,
12th.
like
I got you.
anything, if you were to
July 12th.
execute everything to perfection, then you should win.
Did I give you enough
miss.
pojada today, by the way, Victor?
Oh, dude, I'm just fucking with you, man.
I know.
I just want to get the ending twist. For one.
Well, that's you got to threaten my wife or child, which you're not going to do. So
Well, when you start bringing Connor, we'll start bullying.
there we
Connor.
go. Yeah, there we go. Then I will just straight up MMA you in the middle of jiu-jitsu. But
So I don't think it's necessarily as good of I mean, the analogy kind of holds up, but it kind of doesn't, because I think in jiu-jitsu what you have is this intertwining of people where you're not dealing with a ball moving through space. You're dealing with two people interconnected.
being literally connected to one
So
another.
I think
right?
the variance among reactions is a lot less. So I actually think the possibilities are reduced noticeably in jiu-jitsu. Now there's still the question of
reduced.
there's still a question of in a given position, the proficiency in someone executes a reaction. Like I can frame well and I can frame like shit. You know what I mean?
Right,
like
right.
so. Obviously, there's skill.
And that's
in
where
which
the individual variation comes in, right? Like somebody with
Yeah.
with very good hip mobility versus not. And that sort
Sure.
of thing, right? Like
But a lot of times that just ends up in failure, where either your position gets worse or the position remains the same.
ooh, that's interesting. Because I cannot frame well, but you frame very well. That's interesting. So that's that middle game, right? Like, is there a system you play off of that then? Like that's big, but that's also, I guess you can, in the tree of moves or systems, right? Like there's the different branches. That's, if this person happens to frame well, you do this. If this person doesn't frame well, you can finish with this, right? Like that's the sort of
Okay, well,
heuristics
is mount a system?
absolutely. But there's systems because there's high mount, low mount, middle mount, right? Like
see, I think there are two ways to look at it. I think top side is for a lot of what we do is just pin, is just pinning, and at best it's a dynamic system. There's some level of the only system to it is this dynamic notion of, depending on what the person on bottom does to reposition themselves or frame, you can adjust your pin. But there's no... At least I haven't been... I'll be perfectly honest. I haven't been taught, in my opinion, if I have, then it hasn't registered with me, how to do any sort of system from top side. The only thing I do is wait for an opportunity to improve the position, which is you can mount from here. You could go for a Kimura. You could. It's sort of like this. You get there, you control, and then you figure out what you want to do.
Is it that you figure out what you want to do, or is that so? That's a personality thing too, right? Like I'm a very reactive grappler. In my experience with you, is you're a very proactive grappler, right? So like, I'm reacting to what's available to me, versus you are forcing positions. Is what I've gathered from the difference in the way you and I grapple. So like that's a big thing too, and that's predicated on the person's personality and how familiar with them, with I guess sort of like inherent systems there are in place based upon the opportunities that are available, right? Like I'm a very opportunistic grappler. You know, I find a little opening or they give me something and I roll with it. Versus like I'm not one to push my agenda on somebody, I guess, you know, which is a failure on my part, I guess. I don't know. And that's a thing too, right? Because like, or like let's use the ultimate example of that, right? Like let's look at Ryan Martman and the idea of like pain compliance.
Ryan LaFrance.
Yeah, whatever. Right. I mean, LaFrance. I guess that is his legal name. I'm just not used to calling him that. You know, like the idea of he will force a reaction to open up something. I don't do that, right? Like he and I are very drastically different grapplers. So like the idea of implementing a system, like you're talking about a pinning system, right? Mm-hmm. And looking for like, is that the idea of like who's the onus on? Is it on the person who's on top who's like I'm trying to advance, and I'm trying to seek a specific submission in mind? I mean, like there's no right answer, right? Because it's predicated on both people intertwining with one another. So like,
well, it's funny because when Paul taught me Kimura trap, I have a clear objective in my mind when I get into it.
But based upon the position. But based upon whatever the heuristic is at that moment, right?
Correct.
Like,
but but there's like a clear like, okay, unless my grip totally breaks down or this guy like gets super strong, which can happen. Those are possibilities. Like, but if I'm kind of if my grip's there, then this is kind of a choose your own adventure that I have some control over if I know if I can time the react. We talk about the dilemmas, right?
Right.
That Nick Paul is kind of that situation where it's an either or, and it usually ends up with taking the back or an arm bar. you know?
Or a Kimura.
Or a Kimura.
Right, yeah.
Exactly. If the person just sits there, you get him. So I kind of know like these are the paths I'm going on. Top side, I don't have that notion. Top side,
because top side is a position, not a submission.
Kimura trap is a position.
No, Kimura trap is a system.
Okay, it's a system, yeah. So I get, and then my other thing is when I'm in back mount, I kind of know where I'm trying to go. Where
are you trying to go in back mount? Just out of curiosity.
I'm either trying to I'm first grip fighting.
Okay.
To establish grips on you know, Jerry has just hopped up and said hi to all
And
of them.
literally, like, almost,
Yeah,
like,
knocked him.
clawed
Hi,
me in the
Jerry.
eyeball.
Little Jerry. So, grip fighting.
Okay.
Hopefully getting to the point where I can trap
Their
my
neck,
opponent's
right?
arm
Like, yeah.
with my leg to reduce the number of
Ooh,
defenses that they have.
That's very Danaher of you.
And then either attacking the neck, or I've gotten in the habit of trying to reverse a mounted triangle. Not mounted, but a back mount triangle.
Oh, really? Topsen Kaku or whatever the hell
Yeah,
it
I
is,
like yeah. But I know what I'm working towards, okay? And
So
I
that's
can
an
see
interesting-
very
that's
clearly.
funneling,
Here's what's
right?
fun
Like-
about it. I can clearly see when I fail. I know how I failed. Like I'll be in back mount, and then the guy turtles, and I fall off. I was like, okay, well, the guy was able to turtle, and I slid off. That was a failure on my part, and I'm aware of that. When I'm in top side, I'm not saying I don't know when I fail. I know when a guy retains their guard and when they get their knee in. I understand what's going into that. But when I go to top side, it's not as though I'm like, I know what I'm going to do. Because maybe it's just because there's so many possibilities. And maybe
Because
in my
it's
head
such an
as a
open
game,
position.
I have to, maybe that's strictly on me to say, Noah, you need to develop a game. You need to say, when I go to top side, I'm always trying to go to this. And you know what? I actually started to do that a little bit. Because just this week, for whatever reason, as we're talking about Kimura traps and stuff, because I was like, dude, I like the Kimura trap. It's so
a good
simple
controlling
and solid,
position, yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's simple. Is that I would go to side control, I would go to position 4, and I
You
would
get
look
there,
to attack. I would
overhook the
look
arm,
to
yeah.
attack a Kimura. And then I would even maybe go into and I would also do this from side control, from half guard. I would go to reverse half, try to attack a Kimura, and then fall off and pop my leg out and be in the Kimura
In the
trap.
Kimura trap.
You know, and I guess maybe
So
that's what it
submission
means.
systems might be a better way to convey jiu-jitsu. But that's the issue, right? Like, because like not that by definition jiu-jitsu is position before submission, but like it sort of is and it's also not, right?
But
like,
it's different.
You
Here's
have
the-
to keep the end in mind ultimately.
But
the end
here's
is
where
so
things get harder.
diverse.
Passing and guard retention. I don't think they fit as nicely into a system. Because now
Passing, yes, I think they do. Because there are reactions versus guard retention,
which is reaction.
it's purely reaction,
is reactionary,
right? Like, so like I think that's so like let's say I'm in the middle of pass. So can we micro it down that way, right? Like, let's say I have an over under position on you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as a coach, it's hard for me to say like butterfly 1. Right? Like, that's up to you at that point to look at what hands you have available, what frames you have available, what sort of like grips you have available to be able to attain that position.
Okay, so I agree with you. Passing is systemized.
Passing is
I
definitely
agree with
system
that.
like,
So
because
are we basically saying that
I think attacking is systemized
is systemized,
versus defending.
which is heuristic?
Yes. That's a damn, did we just
have a
Did we just
moment, ladies
patent
and
that?
gentlemen? Did we
Man.
just have a moment, ladies and
How do we
gentlemen?
do this? How do we do this for jiu-jitsu? How do we contact the copyright office and patent this?
I still think topside is kind of a dilemma for me, as is like even the mount, because I think really more than anything it's just a overload of options,
Okay.
and I think as an attacker
Versus mount, you said?
and mount too, yeah.
Okay, and mount. Okay,
And
all
mount.
right.
Because I think you just have to, as the attacker, you have to know, all right, there's a jumping off point from here to a whole buttload of things, you know, and the question is, you need to know, when you define your game, you need to be like, when I go to these real open-ended positions, I need to have a clear idea of which orientation, what.
That's a crazy thing, right? So let's go back to
because
JV.
it's funny. I think I'm explicitly figuring out how I need to do my own jiu-jitsu, because I was like, hey, I had this kind of like, I just realized I did well. I was in control for a longer period of time. You know how they talk about when at the high level, if Gordon Ryan passes your guard, it's over. Or not Gordon, anybody. If these guys get their guards passed, it's over. That's the match.
Right.
It's like at that point, it's almost like chess. It's like it's now just you just do the moves, and then you get to, because those guys are so good, they don't mess up at that point. Right. Whereas a guy like me could even know all the steps 1 through 10, but I'll mess up in there, and a guy will be able to get out. Like the defender will do their best. Like this is my defensive option. If I get lucky and the guy attacking flubs up, I can get out here. But if both guys are operating at maximum efficiency, the attacker wins.
That's an interesting.
That seems to be the
right?
subject. I mean, dude, I saw it in ADCC when they were like, "Who got on someone's back?" It was like, "Oh yeah, Kainan. Kainan got on the back of Nicky Rod." And like, yeah, it's over. There's like 6 minutes left in the fight, and
did he finish him?
He didn't finish him, but he stayed on his back. He kept the body triangle for the rest of the match
because he's so good at maintaining that position.
It's over. Yeah, you got a body triangle
via a system, right? So that's interesting because like that's so contrary to what seems to work well, and like once again, it's a personality thing. Like like JB, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he's like, does that take away from the actual creativity of jiu-jitsu though? Of like, or is that's like if you're thinking purely heuristic based and systems based, which I like to think that systems are developed via scientific process of trial and error of playing the percentages. Like to me, that's the ideal of a system, right? Of course, there are variables. Like sometimes that system doesn't work because you'll be dealing with like the super flexy guy, or the super strong guy, or the case is, right? Like that's the interesting part. Like is
well, I
our
think
systems like sort of universal? Holy shit! Sorry,
it does kind of now. Zeke has shown up.
Jesus. And that's the beauty and the creative. That's the art part of jiu-jitsu and martial arts.
I think it presents an interesting. I don't know if we'd ever get to this point, but we are actually closer to it than I think.
Than we were 5 years ago.
Well, yeah, we're just that we're closer. We're uncomfortably close, is what I would say. We're uncomfortably close to a scenario where it's a jiu-jitsu match will be determined by the first few moments when people are just engaging. And once they're attached, it becomes basically predetermined.
Did you ever play Killer Instinct?
No.
On SNES?
No.
So that reminds you of like Killer Instinct, right? Like the idea that for those of you who are like, I guess, over the age of 35, it was like a video game that was a fighting game, and there was like these super long combos.
Oh, you could just combo lock people.
Yeah, so like, and there were combo breakers, but like it's so timing based.
Sure.
Right? Like that, like you have to hit it at this precise moment. So like, are you saying that essentially, if performed well enough, kata works? Because essentially, if you're talking about like a sequence in a series, right, like in a system, if performed well enough and with enough regularity and precision and just like it's second nature to the person, that essentially a kata works.
Well, I think the thing about jiu-jitsu is you have body attachment,
right.
Which so distance, the distance variable has far less variance on it than you would have in stand-up.
But if your controls are so good and you are, I mean, I'm speaking purely like hypothetical, right? Like if you're so good at performing these systems and constantly putting your opponent in a position of dilemma, right? Like, yeah, I have this option or this option, right? Like, if you look at it from a statistical standpoint, you should be able to narrow it down, given a properly designed system, that you're only playing with dilemmas, and you're only offering certain things that you should be able to execute with an end in mind, based upon that.
I guess
particular
the question
system.
is it possible to achieve that level of technical proficiency?
I don't think so.
Then in that case, then there's enough sport aspect to it that then people will not always get the underhook when it's given to them. You know what I mean? Like there'll be that kind of thing. But I do think that, Keenan Cornelius said that at the high level, anyone can beat anyone on a given day. And I think some of that has to do with
they've refined their systems so well that
it's just once you get into a system, it's a matter of time.
Right.
And you can fight it off for a while, but it's kind of a matter of time thing as opposed to just this thing that can swing. And actually, when you see a, quote, exciting jiu-jitsu match, what it usually is someone escaping a super late submission attempt
and
getting a reset and get a reset.
Yeah.
Right? So, look at some Gary Tonin and Kron Gracie.
God, that's,
that match, right? You have a system. Kron gets this guy in a late-ass armbar. And Gary Tonin contorts his arm to the point that he gets out. Now it's an exciting fight because
he's exited the system.
He exited the system. Yeah, exactly. So maybe we're giving too much credit.
Game, right?
Maybe we're giving too much credit to systems, right? Maybe we're over. But I think from a discussion point of view, and for me, this is actually very interesting because just this conversation has illuminated some things for me in terms of where I pause when I'm grappling and when I don't pause. When I'm in the Kimura trap, I know what I have to do.
Right.
When I'm on top side, I don't know what
Is that purely because you just have an end in mind? Because, like, for example, let's talk about top side control.
I'm not going to let go of it. Like that. Why would I let go of this position?
Yeah, because it's such a such
a down. So outside of that, it's like, well, now I'm just riding the horse.
Okay, so let's look at top side control, like our position 1, 2, 3, and 4. When that happens to you, does your brain shut off and I'm purely in reaction mode?
Yeah.
Or do you
it's more of that.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And usually I'm just gathering I've assumed
because my idea is I want to mount.
Yeah, but I'm not aggressively looking to mount, and I haven't studied the best ways to do it. I just recently been trying to do the leg weave with I weave my arm through I've seen Hodger do it
Yeah.
But the thing is,
where you fucking dope mount from there,
the thing is
leg down.
If you can keep moving and they can keep moving, and it just kind of you end up just following them around the match. You're still in control,
right?
But you're not going to just get them out that way. So, and again, I'm a blue belt. I spend more of my time on bottom than I do on top, right? So
I think that's by choice, but okay.
The opportunities to refine top will come more and more as I get better and better. And I think that's what ends up happening. I think naturally a grappler refines their top game later as they become better than more of the people in their gym.
Ooh, that's an interesting thing because I think that's a personality-based thing. Refining their top game.
I mean, how can you play top game if you're going against... If you're a white belt, how can you?
I think, for example, I think that's based.
Pounds.
Yeah, exactly, right. So that's going to dictate a lot of it too.
100%. That's the caveat.
And plus, okay, so I don't want to use myself as an example, but I'm going to. But when I was at Gracie Barra and I was a white belt, granted I was 220 pounds and I would never go to my back, right? And I was God, I'm not learning off of my back. So from there. I think I was a 4-stripe white belt or whatever the case was. I made a conscious decision when we're midget wrestling off of our knees, I'm not going to go and just try to dominate and just sit there and just go head to head and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go ahead and pull guard and work off my back. And from there I became very, very comfortable with it. Because I was also 215 pounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit different. So doesn't that by definition sort of take it upon... It's the onus of the practitioner to decide what they want to work on.
Well, it's always the onus. I'm not talking about the onus is on the person, the practitioner to follow what they want to follow.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that they have complete control over where the role is going to go.
But I think if they have an end in mind, I think they're more likely to make it happen.
Correct. If wherever, all I'm saying is, is a white belt can roll with a purple belt, and the white belt can have a goal in mind, and their ability to achieve that goal or get close to that goal is going to be influenced by their athletic ability, by their size, by their strength, as is the purple belt.
Sure.
But a big determining factor is going to be skill, and that's the biggest disparity. So
Yeah.
I think that the skill disparity is going to is still going to dictate where the roll goes, and the skill disparity falls in favor of the higher belt.
Right.
You know, but that's not to say that sometimes a higher belt, if they're going with a lower belt that's forcing something, many times the higher belt's just going to go with that because they're like, fine, you know, I'm not going to. Just because you're more skilled doesn't mean you're going to obligate the white belt, in this case, to do exactly what you want them to do in the roll and funnel them exactly where you want to be funneled. Part of the fun of rolling is to be put in weird situations. So you're just going to kind of go with it, you know? Why are you at a loss for words now, Chris?
Because I think we've stemmed a long way from your initial question of using specific language.
I think to me where the questions evolved is we've had this epiphany, and maybe everyone else said it and we didn't realize it, which is systems are like attacking is a systems based thing.
Yes.
And defending is a heuristic based thing.
Right. But at what point, and this is the middle game, right? Like, does defending become attacking? Because like look at, for example, the tight waist series. Yeah, and like look at what sort of like Gordon Ryan calls, I think it's not by happenstance, it's by design that his guard passing tape is called systematically attacking the guard, where most people would classify the guard position as the attacking position. Right? Because like by definition you have 4 points of contact versus no points of contact. So like that's an interesting so it's a mindset thing that all right, man. Thank you for hopping on today.
Mark.
I appreciate you sharing your input.
BJJ and Brews. Any platform. You got it,
BJJ and spell out and Brews. Like, share, subscribe, and follow.
So I think that what I'm also realizing right now is there's a difference between, and actually I saw a video about it recently, one of the short Bernardo Faria teasers, it's called How to Make Your Guard Better. One of those 5-minute guys. Huge honor for me. I'm with so-and-so, and I'm releasing a new instructional sort of thing. So this is a taste, and there's a difference between playing and basically he showed half guard and butterfly, and in one version he showed, let's say, a Z guard where you're kind of there, almost like Nick Paul, honestly, though.
Yeah, okay.
And then another where you're really attached to the person, where you've come in and you're
working your grips and you're fighting for. Okay.
Well, not fighting, but you're attached to the person.
Okay.
Maybe that's something that in my head is probably maybe could make me a better guard player, is that I need to have this rabid notion of getting to not just a position which is I'm in close guard, but I need to, once I'm in close guard, that's just like I attach to them preliminarily, if that's even a word. I've attached to them cursorily. Now I need to attach to them in an actually attacking position. I need to find an overhook, or I need to get onto one side. I need to go to, let's say, a pendulum-looking position. That sort of thing.
And that's a system then, right? Like,
but maybe that's the point. It's like, as a guard player, maybe the thing is I need to get to these superior
intermediary
guard positions.
Yeah,
and the passer, the attacker, is trying to deny that, and that's the game.
That's jiu-jitsu then.
That's jiu-jitsu, but right. I'm realizing that because it's like I'll sit in half guard playing Z guard, and I'm not doing shit. I'm just keeping a guy's weight off me. I'm not going to but here's the weird thing though.
But it's also what's only available to you at that moment too, right? Like,
but in a less dominant position, in my opinion, is when I can do like the Shaolin sweep.
Right.
Like when someone I was grappling the other day and I actually hit a great Shaolin because the guy threw all his weight on me and I was like, aha, Shaolin time, you know? But I wasn't in a great guard position, I would think. You know what I mean? I was just I was managing distance, but I wasn't attached.
So that's a crazy thing, right? Like that's
as the guard player that you are.
Yeah.
Help me reconcile this. Help me understand this.
I'm a super reactive grappler. And I think that's just purely personality.
Passive, reactive.
Yeah, I'm a purely reactive. Like you'll never see me push the issue, right? Like I'm only playing off of what you give me at that moment.
Why is the music still playing here?
I don't know.
Everyone left the gym and we're by ourselves, but they left the music.
It's all right.
On.
I
they turned the AC off.
Yeah,
but
like
they left the
fucking music playing.
I'm like, what?
Whatever. They're just lazy. I don't know. Like I think it's. But it's also like intention in mind, right? Like just going back to Victor today, like I played a much more attacking guard today because Victor was like egging me on, and so I'm like, all right, well I'll play a little bit more with you right now, and so like it's just the mindset of the person whether you're defending or attacking, right? So just get in the mindset of just always attacking.
What's more efficient though? I don't care what the mindset is. What's better?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's the $1 million question, because like,
now you
like
said
what's your goal in mind?
Go ahead.
Right, what's that?
No, keep going because I'm gonna go back to one thing you said earlier. But
like, what's your goal in mind, right? Like, and I'm in general, I try to when I'm rolling funnel to whatever it is we're working on. Not everybody's doing the same, so like that's going to dictate too, like what your intention for that particular role is, or like whether you try to funnel, which is, I think that's training with a ultimate like purpose in mind versus like I'm just gonna play off of what they give me, and then like that's because that opens up so many more doors to what the role is gonna end up being.
That's interesting because I can actually see doing jiu-jitsu in two mindsets, like a systems based one and a reactive based one. Like you just wait, and then when they do something, you respond. There's actually a guy, Wim Puter or Deputer, I forget if it's Puter, Belgian black belt. Met him at Globetrotters.
Mm-hmm.
Really nice guy. Has some instructionals out there, and his principle is the mirroring concept, the mirroring principle. And
is that him? Okay, all right.
And he thinks the person who makes the first move is the one with the disadvantage.
That's interesting because that's actually not Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but that's a Gracie jiu-jitsu idea. Because
hold my mic real quick,
yeah,
and keep talking.
Their idea is that like the person who is initiating attacks is operating on more of like I guess you can say systems-based approach, where it's more of the mind working versus the person who's defending is operating almost purely on instinct. So like the more efficient one is the defender. And I don't know. Of course, it's like a lot of it is like fucking Gracie salesmanship is like, because they are like a self-defense based like academy. Like they predicate their idea of what the purest jiu-jitsu on is the one who's defending and counterattacking, because they're operating on a more, these are my heuristics. If they do this, then I automatically do this, and it should work because I've practiced that like efficiency that much, or I've developed that efficiency.
Well, I'm just wondering if you distill jiu-jitsu, can you say the guy on bottom is still doing a system, and it's really just a matter of the sport aspect is, are people timing their movements and actions and counter? And I think that's where you get back to the sport of jiu-jitsu. It's like everyone knows how to shoot a basketball.
Sure.
Are you going to succeed every time?
Of course not.
Of course not, right? And especially if you have a defender, that's the sport aspect of it. So if someone is in my De La Riva in headquarters, I have an idea what my reaction should be as the guy on bottom. The guy on top entered headquarters position. Ideally, he's not hanging out there, and they're doing something. And we have this window of if I'm first with my reaction times, my athleticism, and my
Kazushi and
and all
right?
that,
Like, yeah.
then I win, and that's the sporting aspect of it. So it's almost
Is that
like,
really the sporting aspect, or is that the actual purity of it, right? Like the
I
art
think
portion
the
of
thing
it.
is if everyone knows jiu-jitsu fully, then it becomes a sport. But what ends up happening is there's still a significant amount of jiu-jitsu where people, quote, win because the other person doesn't know the jiu-jitsu that they're doing. Leg locks. If you don't know what
True,
leg
yeah.
locks are,
Yeah.
that's like grappling with a white belt. Like being a white belt and grappling with someone, you're like, they're scrambling. Like imagine when I was a white belt, people were getting on my backs and manipulating me. I had no idea what they were trying to do, but then I realized they were choking me out.
Right.
Until it's too late. Same thing with leg locks. To
Especially
someone who
with leg
doesn't know
locks,
leg
yeah.
locks, it's like this guy's under me and I'm kind of like fumbling with my legs, and then the next thing I know, he's ripping my knee off, you know? So there's a dual aspect of knowledge and then the execution of it in a sports-like manner. God dang it, jiu-jitsu's so vast. Can't I just learn it in one day? Can't I just fucking
you
enter
just
some
plug
cheat
it back in the
codes?
back of your head, man? And I know
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, dang, bro.
Are we giving jiu-jitsu too much credit?
No, we're fans of dude.
Are we giving jiu-jitsu too much credit? Like, is the sweet science? Like, can we speak? Because we downplay it. Like, we've all kind of like dogged it, right? Like, you actually talked about the other day is like Muay Thai. You're like, there's really only 8 attacks, and like beyond that, it's just like whoever's like more attribute based and is better at executing whatever it is. But like, doing Muay Thai, there are systems behind that too, right?
Oh, for sure.
So like, do you think there's something to the tactileness of jiu-jitsu that makes it so much more complicated in properly developing systems? And because like how many, like I don't know enough about baseball and football and basketball, but like when you play like Madden, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like these sort of like built-in plays, to me, those are essentially just multi-person katas. Right, like those are
Madden is like I when I worked over there, we had.
Did you work over in Maitland?
I worked in Maitland, yeah.
At EA,
At
really?
EA Sports, yeah.
Do you know Matt Drennan?
No.
Okay, because he's a brown belt at Longwood. But
so there's this huge, like they'd have discussions about Madden where it's like they're like, why shouldn't Madden just be a pre-snap read game? And just let the play out, because everyone wants to run and catch the ball, but that's like the. It's almost like you can't do it. There are like 2 people involved. It's like you have to be the quarterback and throw the ball, and then you're somehow going to be the receiver and run and catch.
yeah,
the
exactly.
ball.
How
It's
the
like
hell do you even?
But what ends up happening is at the quote professional level of people playing Madden, it's people changing their formation mad like crazy at the beginning to make sure that their formation beats the formation of the defense. So it's almost like rock paper scissors.
Right,
It's like a fancy
yeah.
rock paper scissors where it's
Like I need to move person.
it's like right now.
G
It's
to
like
that,
right now.
yeah.
It's like it literally. It's people. Imagine rock paper scissors where you can see if I have a scissor, a rock, or a paper out, and I can see if you have a rock, a paper, a scissor out.
And it's a bluff
and
game,
we're
right?
constantly switching between the two right up until we snap the ball.
Isn't that poker essentially? Then? Right? Like that's poker, right? Like
So that's kind of what. So Madden's kind of a weird one. I'm trying to think of a better sports game.
But like, do you see what I'm getting? Like, because essentially each of those to me
I'll
is
give
a
you a
prearranged
better example.
thing, right? Like
EA MMA. I worked with the team that did the MMA game.
Oh, did you really? Okay.
And I worked with them right after that. And I know exactly to some degree how they made the game. And
Which are super hard, by the way.
the EA MMA game was made. This was the one that had Randy Couture and Fedor on the cover. This was before the UFC license.
Oh, this is I got you. It
Okay.
was like non-UFC.
The non-UFC, which still they had.
I think they
Boston-
used the same mechanics. They just rebranded it as UFC. right?
Unfortunately, no.
Let's not.
This
get
might
there.
be too insider baseball, but the team that took over for that project when they got the UFC license ended up taking the boxing engine for a boxing game that those guys had made. So they actually threw away a lot of the work that the guys in Orlando did.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that was kind
That
of.
sucks.
Well, the guys in Orlando believed in the way they threw it together. They did it, and but that's neither here nor there. The thing is the way that game was organized, was structured. It was basically a game of timing windows. Where
isn't that jiu-jitsu though?
Well, no, it is. It was timing windows where animations had, an animation to basically advance from a closed guard, let's say closed guard to half guard. You would have loved it because it was all hierarchy based. Nice. But there was a window in each of those animations where the other person could counter. And depending on the skill,
that's very Street Fighter, right?
And depending on the skill, so if we were grappling,
but skill or timing, there's a difference.
Both.
Right? Okay.
The windows were set at specific frames in the animation.
So this is all pre-programmed.
Yes.
Like this is my weak point.
Yes.
Really? That's interesting.
So basically it's like this part of the animation is when you can escape. Now here's the thing. That window is variable. Its placement is unique, is static. The placement is the same. The width of it depends on the skill of the person attacking and the skill of the person defending. So if we're dealing with grappling, a grappler with 100 with level 100, they do math.
So that's the counter. Oh, okay. So that's how those are the stat points.
The way the stats go into it is I don't know how they did it, but essentially the grappling rating of the defender. Let's say you're trying to pass someone's guard,
right?
Advanced position.
Okay.
Right? There's a window to do it. Okay.
Sure. Yeah. I mean that just right in life too.
And actually in this case it would be if you're passing the guard, you initiate a guard pass, and then there's a window to defend it. Okay. So the guy defending, they take the grappling skill of the defender. They take the grappling skill of the offender, the offensive person.
And the disparity is the window of escape.
Just basically, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That is incredible that they would be able... That means they had to have jiu-jitsu people involved.
Oh, yeah,
or
absolutely.
MMA people involved, right?
Dude, there's a guy who was so in love with Kung Lee that he put in like Kung Lee's like special kick.
Really?
Like, yeah, that was the only...
That's super interesting, right? Like, so like we can apply that to actual like us. Right? Like so a person who's like good at guard retention essentially has a longer window to retain guard against a person who's that's weird because like passing should counter guard retention from like a
I look at it this way. When Paul passes someone's guard, let's say when Paul goes from open guard to top side.
Yeah.
He does it in a way where the window for you to prevent that
is
nil. Smaller.
Yeah, it's
compared to compared to what a white belt passing would do, right? Also, if the person on bottom's really good, you have a black belt on the bottom, his frames, his retention ability means that he probably can give himself a little better chance of retaining against Paul because he can widen that window or make more space.
Ooh, so how long before we develop our jiu-jitsu video game with EA?
Dude, I mean,
because there are different facets, right? Like because like at this point,
it has to be
it's
MMA,
not grappling
because nobody likes
striking.
grappling. Like the grappling was cool, but I mean, everyone just liked to stang, and even I did. I kept taking Dan Henderson and just kept doing
just
the big
overhand, right?
Yeah, I kept just
the H bomb or
the H bomb. I kept banging.
That's funny. That's how we need to look at each other, right? Like.
Then there's the issue of how to do submission. I forget how they did it, but people
there has to be an open window there.
Well,
right?
it's like once you attack a triangle or once you attack an armbar, it entered a mini game, and I don't know how the mini.
Is it like this typical like Telltale games? There's like a big circle and it's like
kind of like I know with the armbar with joint locks they actually showed like the joint. And
really?
And they show it like break it. Like,
that person like going like switch their arm. That's super awesome. Like that means that they've educated themselves in grappling.
They had a bunch of guys. It's a shame. It's like it's one of those things where if things happen in a different order in my life, I would have appreciated. Like I wasn't there for that. That would happen right before I started working there, and I also was nowhere near as into mixed martial arts and grappling as I am now. So if I were there with the mind I have now and I got to meet Boss Root and I got to meet Big John McCarthy, I got to meet who else did they come? Randy Couture, you know,
And
like,
Fedor, that's awesome.
Fedor I don't think came in, but there were guys that just did stuff for marketing, and there were guys that came in,
Okay.
you know, and got mocapped and got, you know, I don't know if they got mocap, but they probably got mocap, but they gave feedback. And participated.
Like,
and Boss Rutan apparently was like, it's just as crazy in real life as he is like on screen.
So that is Boss.
Like,
right?
I know
like,
somebody who like had to drive him to the airport, like, and he was just like crazy in the best possible way. So, and I'll say this: the one cool thing about I think Jacare was in there.
Was he really?
Yeah.
Oh, like he's a Strike Force guy.
Yeah, he's a Strike Force guy, right? So
grappling level 100.
The one thing that they all said about the game was, and the one thing that the team had to add to the game, that was a pain to. It was actually kind of a pain to do, but they had to make it work. Was the fist bump. All the fighters are like the respect. You got to have the respect in it.
Really,
and they love the fist bump. So you can do a fist bump in the game where if both players hit the button, they do it. What's funny is at the time it was a big challenge when you have Bob Sapp against Nate Diaz. How do you get their arms to line up and actually fist bump?
I would imagine, yeah.
So that there's animation issues with different sized opponents. That was one of the biggest issues.
I would imagine there's some sort of like algorithm that's like shoulder length, like shoulder height, right? Like the taller person.
What you end up seeing is the. Yeah, but the math to figure that out.
Oh,
like, the way to algorithmically figure out how to get people of disparate size, disparate size, to actually like link up and not like intersect each other in the video game world is difficult. So, are you getting bitten by mosquitoes?
I've had one buzzing, so I don't typically get bitten by mosquitoes. I think I eat enough garlic that there's enough sulfur in my sweat to prevent that from happening. I don't know whether that's true or not.
I eat a lot of garlic too.
Well, I'm also Southeast Asian, which like we're fucking evolved for like 2 million years to like avoid malaria. So I have not. I there was one buzzing around my head, and I was like, "Fuck off, go attack Noah." So like I think he's got you.
He
now,
just went off.
so,
Yeah. And they always bite where the skin's thin, so they bit at my ankles and my kneecap or something.
They've got a good system.
They've got a good attacking.
Yeah, man. They got away from the guy.
All right, so we'll have to think about this, but I think we've had some real. I've had personally some realizations about this. I definitely am going to be attacking Kimura traps more.
You should, yeah, because it's a good system.
It's fun, man.
Is it a good series or system though?
I think it's system. I think people say series. I think that's just
synonymously.
It's a system. I think that's just something that people use as a word, but I think we can categorize it as a system.
I agree.
still am trying to figure out how to categorize topside. It's not a system.
It's a pinning system, no doubt.
Yeah, it's a pinning system.
Because the idea is to pin, right? Like it's just, I think the differentiation between series versus system is just something with an end in mind.
And and the pinning system doesn't. A pinning system is just maintaining.
But it's pinning. That's the end. That's the end, right? Like it's just to fucking hold them on their back and not let them regard.
Yeah, but it's an infinite. Like all the other systems have a finite ending. This ending is actually infinite.
But that's in an end in of itself.
It's like a cyclical thing. If they do this, then you move here. If they do that, you move, and then you just end up just surfing them back and forth in that. So yeah, you can make sense of it, but it's different from.
It's a control system. Ooh,
instead of
instead of a submission system.
Well, but see, the Kimura trap doesn't have to. Like with the other system, it either ends in submission or a superior
or
position.
A better position,
or a superior position with its own system. Right,
okay.
Like if
but there are no systems of positions. That's the problem, right? Like,
I feel like back mount is like if you take back mount, you're attacking from there.
Sure, but like there aren't like you don't say like you could just use an example. Like there's no closed guard system. Closed guard is a position that opens you up to many other systems, right? Like because look at all the different grips and whatnot. We'll have to discuss that more. Like at this point, I think we're arguing over semantics.
Yes.
Yeah, we're definitely arguing over semantics. But ultimately, I think
Jiu-Jitsu is fun.
Clarification of semantics may help development of the student and conveying of information.
Yes, and I think that
Paul, did you have a discussion about this with Paul?
no.
He was literally using sort of like, let's look at terminology, guys, today in class. So I think he's listening to our podcast.
Whoa. Well, he didn't say hi to us or acknowledge us.
Or
when we were recording.
or
He just-
goodbye.
he just kind of
fucker.
waltzed out here. He did the old Irish goodbye there. Well, guys, it's been almost 2 hours. Well, it's an hour 45 minutes.
Yeah, we've had a lot of fun.
If you made it this far, you actually got us. We got
a minute interview with a new student, which is
Yes.
fun. Yeah, sorry.
And
ADD.
we got to actually talk about jiu-jitsu at the end. So every week we'll be dropping a new episode. You keep it right here. We'll catch you down the road.
Like, subscribe, share.